You can take a flower, roll it up and make it fine. Sprinkle it with knowledge and a little bit of time. Cover it with headlines and a sweet euphoria too. Cannabis Man, Cannabis Man can. Who can take a story and make it feel so grand? Spread the word around about the wonders of this land. Mix it all with laughter and a sprinkle of insight. Cannabis Man, Cannabis Man flies. Ooh, Cannabis Man, spreading news and joy across the land. Diving deep into the glowing green. Cannabis Man, we're all keen. Ooh, ooh yeah. Ooh yeah. Ooh yeah. Cannabis Man, spreading news and joy across the land. Diving deep into the glowing green. Cannabis Man, we're all keen. Ooh, ooh yeah. Ooh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Welcome into another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you so much for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppen, and it turns out you are listening to a top 10% in the world podcast. I just found this out. Global rankings. There's about 3.5 million podcasts out there, and this one, Cannabis Man, is in the top 10%, and you have helped make that happen. Really can't thank you enough for that. And if you haven't already, do me a favor and leave a rating or review for the show. Like and subscribe. If you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get this, there's a chance to leave a rating or review, and it helps me out if you can do that. You can also follow the show on social media at C-Man Podcast on X and Instagram, and it's the Cannabis Man Podcast Facebook page and YouTube channel. And this is a show where I'm trying to take a journalistic look at all things legal cannabis as the landscape changes in states throughout America and countries around the world. There is lots to talk about relating to cannabis all the time. Rules are different state by state. There is waiting for this rescheduling announcement from the DEA. The Democratic National Convention's in town, and there's talk about cannabis being on the ballot this November. Lots of excitement if you are a connoisseur or an enthusiast like myself, or somebody who's just looking to explore it maybe for the first time if you never have before. The end of this prohibition, even though it's kind of piecemeal so far, the end of it is in sight fully, and I think that's bringing a lot more people into the fold here of those who would be interested in trying cannabis products. And on that note, I like to talk about news stories and give you perspective about some of the changing landscapes. I also like to interview guests on the show, and I have one such guest today. I will talk with anybody in the space, if these are business owners, entrepreneurs who have started a dispensary or created some kind of product, maybe a grower or cultivator, somebody who's been in that space for a long time and can tell us about things you need to watch out for when you're starting your home grow, some problems they ran into, as well as political leaders, if they're appointed or elected, and they're in departments now state by state or in countries around the world where they need to be creating laws and new legal framework for cannabis as it becomes, normalized and accepted, moved from the black market, illegal side of society into the daylight of normalcy and regular old commerce, the way that we handle alcohol and tobacco and caffeine and the others. I'll also talk with doctors who are looking to research and answer questions about cannabis or prescribe it medically, or journalists like myself covering the space, talking about different stories that come up. Any one of those I love talking with and bringing you those conversations right here on the show. And today I'm talking with someone who is running a new dispensary chain. They're in different states. They're in Missouri, they're in Connecticut, they're in Ohio, and they're in Illinois as well. And they opened a new location in Springfield. Great fanfare with their grand opening last month in July, and I'm really excited to get down there at some point and check out some of their many, many products that they offer. I'm talking about the Shangri-La dispensaries, and I'm speaking with someone who works for them later in the show. You can hear kind of about what their philosophy is regarding products. You can hear about their origin story, where they came from, and what they're looking to provide in terms of medical patients as well as just adult rec consumers of the cannabis plant. I also, of course, have the News Joint Wrap, and I've started, very excited to tell you this, I've started judging some gummies. I have got my Best in Grass edibles kit, the gummy kit. There are non-gummies with cookies and chocolate and whatnot, and I got a gummy kit with a lot of Illinois' best gummy makers sending stuff in this Best in Grass competition, which is underway right now. You can still get your kit if you haven't. I'll tell you how to do that later and kind of dive into my review of the first gummies that I tried out of this judging kit. Very excited to share that with you, and some other news stories that I thought you should hear about as well. So, without further ado, let's get into this episode of the Cannabis Man podcast.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis Broadcast.
Yeah, welcome in. Now we're in the show properly, and I want to thank you again just for listening, because I was looking at some stats. I don't regularly do this because when I first started this show a few years ago and it was just me, I kind of was focused on just my format, getting the podcast out, creating this thing, and figuring out the layout and how I wanted to do it, what I was trying to present to you out there. And so I don't often look at the stats here, but as I mentioned at the top, this is a top 10% around the globe podcast, which I am floored by. And I'm also floored by the locations around the world where people are listening. In the U.S. here, if you're in Chicago or anywhere else in Illinois, I love you. You're right here with me, and we're experiencing the same things, and I really thank you for checking this out. But there are so many other states in the U.S. where people are listening that I love. Wisconsin, Philly and Pennsylvania, New York, Minneapolis, Minnesota, all the way to the West Coast in Hollywood and down to Hawaii and up to Alaska. And then outside the U.S., I've got a lot of people listening in Canada, Australia, Germany, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Switzerland, Sweden, and so many more. 82 countries in total. And I just can't thank you enough. I'm so humbled by the fact that what I'm putting out here is resonating so far around the world. And I just love that you're a part of this with me right here. This journey has been nothing but fascinating for me. And there's so much cool stuff to talk about that I love bringing to you, this information and these conversations. So let's get into some of that information right now on the News Joint Wrap. This is a wrap-up of news stories and events relating to cannabis in or around Illinois, and it's curated for you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com, which I think of as the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. And some of that news is the Department of Revenue released its details for updated cannabis tax rates. Jason Brown of Illinois News Joint wrote an article here that I've linked below. The updated excise tax rates and fees for cannabis cultivation privilege tax, the purchaser excise tax, and other non-cannabis products, including cigarettes, tobacco, liquor, coin-operated amusement device like gambling machines, dry cleaning solvent, electricity for municipalities, invested capital, gas, hotels, parking, and more. So I read that just so that you know it's not like they're picking on cannabis here. These tax revisions are happening across the board for Illinois privileges, as they say. Now, the two cannabis-related tax details, according to Jason Brown, included in the cannabis cultivation privilege tax and the purchaser excise tax, both of those remained the same. The cannabis cultivation privilege tax stayed at 7% of taxable receipts from the first sale of cannabis by a cultivator. And the purchaser excise tax also remained the same, broken down into three parts, which Jason provides writes here, 10% of the purchase price from a buyer from a cannabis retailer of adult use cannabis with an adjusted THC level at 35% or less, 25% of the purchase price for a purchase of adult use cannabis with an adjusted THC level above 35%, and then it's 20% of the purchase price from a cannabis retailer of any adult use cannabis infused products. So the gummies, the beverages, the non-smokables, that's 20%. And then below 35% of THC in flower is 10, and above that is 25%. Just to give you an idea of the taxes you're paying in Illinois for cannabis products. Jason gives more details about those rates and some of the other updates in that article, which again you can check out below. And here's another story that I thought was definitely worth celebrating. Governor J.B. Pritzker is to award $5.5 million in social equity cannabis loans. Now, this happened just last week on August 17th, ahead of this Democratic National Convention where Pritzker and a lot of the other politicians in town have been occupied here. I work in downtown Chicago. I've been in and around these areas. They're holding most of the events at the United Center, which is on the west side, and then McCormick Place, which is kind of south of the Loop, near Soldier Field, where the Bears play. But even so, there are a lot of bigwigs in town. You've got Vice President Kamala Harris, who's the candidate. You've got VP nominee Tim Walz, who just spoke last night. I'm recording this Thursday, the 22nd, and my wife and I stayed up to watch him speak last night, which is Wednesday. And got to tell you, love the Midwestern energy there. Love the Midwest dialect. Very Minnesota stuff happening there. And I was so thrilled to hear it. It really does feel like, our part of the country has taken center stage, and I'm here for it, man. It's enjoyable to hear. But the reason I bring that up is because a lot of parts of downtown are closed off right now. The bus I normally take down Lakeshore and then Michigan Avenue to work, hitting Chicago, the street there, once you get off Lakeshore Drive on Michigan, that is entirely fenced off. And it's because the hotels in that area are housing some of these delegates. And then a lot of storefronts on the Mag Mile, Michigan Avenue, are also fenced off, which I don't blame them for. I understand, back in 2020, we had those protests that summer, and, there was a lot of looting and damage that went along with that. So if I were a store owner on the Mag Mile, even though you view a fence maybe as like a bit of a shopper deterrent, it's not exactly inviting to walk through a steel fence to get into the Vans store to pick up some shoes. But even so, I understand it's also a deterrent for the crime, and maybe because of the crowds that are drawn here, the protests, I think it was just an abundance of caution. And so far, sitting here on Thursday, which is the last day of this convention, I gotta say, things have gone pretty well. There's been some moments with an aggressive show of force from the police, but there's been no significant damage reported, no injuries, even when some of the protests got, I think on Monday or Tuesday, there was a little bit of a heat inflection point around the UC perimeter, and there had to be a little bit of a buildup of cops around there, but that was squashed really quickly, and nothing really came of it. So I, so far, am just applauding the city of Chicago and the DNC overall. Got to give credit to Pritzker and Mayor Johnson for doing what seemed to be necessary in order to have this go off without a hitch, because, hey, with a lot of people gathering in any area, protesters and people who want to, make some kind of either statement or get on the national news circuit making some point about whatever they're passionate about, that thing is always there. And working in media, there have been bomb threats, there have been these other things, but all were found to be unfounded, and nothing has come of this other than some pretty smooth sailing, some good musical performances. John Legend was there last night. Pink is going to be performing tonight. So it has been a very exciting week here, and I just wanted to say that I applaud them for doing as well of a job as they have. But anyway, back to what I was saying about Pritzker and the social equity cannabis loans. Forgive the digression there. But this program, through it, 23 qualified licensed social equity dispensaries will receive $240,000 in direct forgivable loans financed by the state of Illinois. The announcement goes on to state, after providing approximately $22 million through round one of the Cannabis Social Equity Loan Program to craft growers, infusers, and transporters, DCEO opened round 2 for adult use dispensaries. Loan recipients are social equity conditional and adult use dispensing organizations licensed by the Illinois Department of Finance and Professional Regulation. That's the IDFPR that always has a lot to do with cannabis regulations here. This round of funding was open to dispensaries who received licenses prior to the July 2023 dispensary license lottery. You may recall that last summer, after the lawsuits that had tied up so many of the cannabis dispensary licenses in court, once those were all resolved, there was a new round of licenses issued last year. And so if you got yours before that round, you were eligible to receive some of this funding, and round 2 is now underway. So you can, if you're interested, you can apply for some of those $5.5 million in loans, forgivable loans that is, to the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, which is linked in the article, which I have linked below in the description notes. And of course, Jason, along with his staff at Illinois News Joint, always do great dispensary highlights, brand highlights, and reviews. Some of those recent reviews include Watermelon Spritz Gummies by Kiva, Romulan Pre-Rolls by Arise, and then Know Your Brand Canact Wellness is highlighted recently as well, along with Cookie Got Creamed White Chocolate Cups by Sweet Buzz. I had a very fascinating interview with Sweet Buzz recently, and I'll be bringing that to you in the next few weeks, but this Cookie Got Creamed, the White Chocolate Cups, that is just one of many delicious sounding items that they have on their roster there. And if you're interested in trying those or many other of the craft licensee products in Illinois, you can head out to the Craft Showcase Consumption event, which is set for September 7th, 2 weeks from Saturday, I believe, the 24th of August here. It is the inaugural Craft Showcase for licensees, and it is going on in Tilton at Molly's Joint from noon to 7 p.m. on September 7th. You can reserve free tickets and find out more about the event, as well as plenty of other information relating to cannabis, all at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Now I'd like to get into my strain of the week, and this week, as I mentioned at the top, I'm getting into my Best in Grass Judge Kit, which I got the edible gummies kit for, and the first products that I took out of that kit to give a try to are the Days Off brand of gummies. They market them under the Taste Buds brand. You might see these on your dispensary store shelves, and the flavor of this package in the Best in Grass Judge Kit is Strawberry Lemon Fade, which is a name that I love, tickles me on a few different levels there. THC-infused gummy candies. They label on the package here that each gummy has 10 milligrams per, and this little package in the Judge Kit had 5 total gummies. So you're looking at 50 milligrams in the package entirely. Flipping over to the back side, they mention dosage directions: start low, go slow. I think that's a good rule for any edible experimentation you might be doing. They ask wait 2 hours for full effects before increasing dosage. I'll tell you though, I popped 2 right off the bat last night to give these a try because, my tolerance is such that, a 10 milligram gummy, I'll feel it likely, but, not enough to make a significant judgment about one way or the other. So I went with 2 gummies, 20 milligrams of THC total, and I had an enjoyable time. I'll tell you before I get into the review, these gummies are marked as vegan, gluten-free with no artificial flavors or colors, and fat-free as well. The ingredients listed are corn syrup, sugar, pectin, citric acid, natural flavors, sodium citrate, cannabis oil, MCT oil, fruit and vegetable juice for color. Now, right off the bat in that nutrition label, I'll tell you, the pectin gummies are my favorites. I talked a few times on the show about how most gummies are made with gelatin. It's easy to work with. It's hard to get away from that. So I think like 90% of the gummies on the market are gelatin-based gummies. But I'll tell you, for my money, any gummies that are made with pectin instead of gelatin, I find their texture to be so much more enjoyable, and that was consistent with these Days Off Taste Buds Strawberry Lemon Fade gummies as well. Now, I wrote down some notes last night, and I'm going to add these to the judging comments at bestingrass.io. If you go and read those, if you're interested at all, you will find this review in greater detail there. but I'll just go through some of the highlights for you here now. I found the flavor to be delicious, more tart than sweet. The texture, as I said with the pectin, soft, not tough. I've been reviewing a lot of Kana gummies lately, which I really love. I love the effects of them, but they are gelatin-based and they're a little coarse with the sugar granules that you can get on a lot of gummies. These Taste Buds Strawberry Lemon Fade, they had no sugar granules and they were not tough at all to chew on. They were very soft, easy to bite into.
We'll be right back.
Hey there, listener. How does this sound to you? An evening of laughs, meeting new people, wonderful cannabis, and delicious food, all enjoying some live performances on stage. How does that sound to you? Because if it sounds good like it does to me, you need to check out my friends at Can-O Comedy. This is a cannabis-infused dinner and comedy club which puts on performances across various Chicago venues and in the surrounding suburbs. Picture this. You head to a new venue, doors open, and food infused with lovely cannabis is served at 5:30. Music is playing, you mingle with new people, and you're just coasting until those delicious infusions hit your system. You are able to bring your own cannabis, and depending on the venue, you can smoke it, you can eat it, you can drink it, however you like consuming it, bring your own, and you can enjoy it there. 8 p.m., comedians hit the stage, and depending on how many there are, shows end between 9:30 and 10. Stoner Nat says she was inspired to create Can-O Comedy by the great comic Lenny Bruce, who was not afraid to veer into politics and serious topics, but knew just how to take the sting out of them with a laugh. Cannabis, food, music, and comedy, these are things which can bring people together and maybe share their stories, bringing joy, comfort, and the healing medicine of laughter to a world that can certainly use it. Find out more and get tickets to the next event at canocomedy.com/events. Pleasant to bite into is what I wrote, like a ripe strawberry on a summer's eve. That's exactly what I thought of in my stoned state. Subtly sour, lingering on the taste buds like a cheerful song. I feel the pleasant buzz in my head, behind the ears. I don't know if you'll resonate with that at all, but you can often feel these cannabis products in different places of your body. For me, the buzz that I felt last night after taking 2 of these was kind of right at the base of the skull, behind the ears. That is where I was, it's not as if it was a full-on buzz, but it was just kind of like a very subtle hum, and it was very pleasant, and I enjoyed that. In terms of the body, I felt a warm hum down my spine, and I deadlifted yesterday. I did a few other workouts, and so my legs and my lower back were pretty sore throughout the day. The pain from those faded, along with the stresses of the rest of my day as well. The thoughts that I had were very pleasant, and I found myself reflecting on the very positive elements of life. That lasted about 2 hours, and then I went to bed, and I slept very, very well last night, too. The nights beforehand, I hadn't taken anything, and it was like 2 or 3 pretty rough nights of sleep for me, where I got down easily enough, but woke up a few times in the night, and then when I ended up starting the next day, I felt groggy. I felt a little bit out of sorts. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And so last night I slept great, mostly through the night, popped up at 6:30 this morning and went for a nice walk, and it was just a really, really great send-off into the evening. And that was my experience with the Days Off Taste Buds Strawberry Lemon Fade gummies. So if that sounds good to you, and I do have a couple left, I'm going to try and take some in the daytime, and I'll mention how that goes as well, because obviously, the stimuli of whatever it is you're doing, whichever activity, whoever you're hanging with, set and setting is always what we talk about relating to either edibles of cannabis or any other psychedelics like mushrooms or MDMA or ketamine. Whatever you're doing, set and setting is always going to have an impact. And, I was just tired after a day of work last night. It was nighttime. My wife and I are hanging with our daughter Violet, put her to bed, watch the DNC, and then go to bed. Pretty simple. But what I would really love to do with these days off taste buds is I want to take some this weekend during the day and kind of go for a walk outside, maybe maybe along the beaches. I know it's supposed to be kind of hot and humid around here, but these Taste Bud Strawberry Lemon Fade gummies, they really strike me as something that would give you a nice daytime pleasant buzz. And I think if you were able to go outside wherever you are, if you're on the East or West Coast or anywhere around the world, whatever kind of nature speaks to you, walking along the water, dipping in for a hike along a forest trail, stepping out into even a desert with just vast plains of expanse, or wherever you are, whatever your outside looks like, whatever that canvas looks like for you, I think taking some of these gummies and going for a stroll out in it, feeling some of the fresh air, the sun on your skin, smelling some of the summertime smells, and that to me is exactly the kind of vibe that these cultivate, and I think they would go very nicely along with that. Listener, my guest today has a fascinating story to tell. You know, I love highlighting dispensaries around Illinois, and over the last few years, ever since it's become legal for adult recreational use in January of 2020, there have been a few new dispensaries popping up. As I mentioned many times on the show, there was obviously a period there where various lawsuits in Illinois courts kind of held up their new dispensaries from kind of entering into the foray. But now all those have been settled, and so we are in the midst of a really exciting time here where there are new dispensaries coming up into the state market, offering fabulous new products and popping up in locations making cannabis more accessible to Illinoisans across the state. And there is one such new dispensary that has opened in Springfield. This is the Shangri-La dispensary, and this is a dispensary that's crafted a premium cannabis shopping experience. They started in 2019, family-founded company, and the members have extensive backgrounds in retail compliance, business management, medicine, as well as dentistry, which I found very fascinating, and I'm interested to explore that connection, if there is any, with cannabis here. But they focused first on medical marijuana, creating a model that focuses on patients' overall well-being, giving education, and cultivating a better understanding and perception of cannabis, which, as you know, I am all about. That was exactly what led me to starting this very podcast here. And so I thought, who better to tell us a little bit more of the story about this dispensary than K-Paul Patel, president of Shangri-La Dispensaries. Welcome, K-Paul. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Don. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. And so let's get started with you. How did you get first into the cannabis space?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm the president of the company. My brother, he's the CEO and he's the founder. We started off with this dispensary and getting into the cannabis market, as you mentioned, in 2019. We are from Missouri, so that whenever Missouri started its legalization process in the cannabis field, my brother, being the founder, he really wanted to get into this business. And a short story about how we got into it, as I am the dentist that you mentioned. I graduated in 2021 from dental school in Missouri. And my sister-in-law, she's also a physician. So the idea came about in Missouri when the cannabis became legal and we wanted to get into a business. We were already into the convenience and retail store business. And when the cannabis market launched, it was a new venture for us, and we all sat together and decided then how to approach into this market that was kind of new to us. We never thought about being in a state where cannabis would legally sell. So when we wanted to apply for the license, obviously it was a long, tedious process. But even before that, for ethical reasons, we did a lot of work. We spent a few months, probably from 2 to 6 months, in doing the research on what cannabis is. And as we did more research, being in the medical field and having that background, the more research we did, we were able to really feel happy about the product that we potentially would be offering to our customers, and how much it would really help compared to other products that are already existing in the country and the world regarding alcohol and tobacco. And we really thought cannabis could potentially really help our patients. They did from anywhere from war veterans or people with just anxiety or depression or not being able to sleep at night. So the more research we did, we actually felt very good about what this what cannabis has to offer the market. And then we agreed that we'll start the process, and we got fortunate enough with all the hard work we put into it, and we won the licenses in Missouri in 2019, and ever since then we have expanded into multiple other states, including Illinois, Ohio, and Connecticut.
Wow, that is very exciting, man, and a very cool journey, I gotta say. I mean, I've talked with a lot of people on the show, and you brought up several of the issues that I bring up all the time in terms of quality of life stuff, meaning anxiety, trouble getting to sleep, chronic pain, the issues that, anyone from veterans to ex-athletes to just all the rest of us out here suffering from, issues of existence. These are just things that can come with life on Earth, and some of those unpleasantries or these quality of life problems, cannabis is there to offer some solutions for it. But you guys coming from medical backgrounds, you mentioned you're the dentist, your family member being a physician. I think that it's so cool that you guys came from a place of healing, obviously wanting to help people with those specific issues. Then you get into researching cannabis and kind of make the decision, feel good about entering into that space. Let me ask you, just before we get into the business of Shangri-La, let me ask you, as a dentist, if you found anything specifically here, I'm just curious, what, potential, we already mentioned kind of pain relief, body pains and stuff like that, and anxiety that cannabis can offer. But in terms of the dental field, is there anything that you specifically, having gone through that you see as an opportunity for sort of cannabis use relating to any kind of dental work or pain?
So dentistry is a little bit of an outset when it comes to the medical, dealing with the body as a whole. Dentistry is obviously any dental pain or any dental trauma can affect the rest of the body. However, direct link between cannabis and then the dentistry field, I have not specifically experienced some condition where cannabis could directly help, such as tooth pain or anything like that. However, as I say, holistically, anything that happens in a person's body and better quality of life, as you mentioned, cannabis does obviously have a potential positive impact on the overall body. However, when it talks about strictly between dental pain or dental trauma with cannabis, I have not had to directly, would suggest any cannabis use specifically for a dental condition. However, like I said, when you have a dental condition and then people are or patients are not able to afford dental care, not able to get help as they need due to dentistry or the medical field being expensive and a lot of the negative experience that comes in a patient's lifestyle as a whole, I think cannabis again can help with the anxiety, the depression, or any of that overall condition. But just directly speaking, I have not specifically found any direct connection. But overall, dentistry of being part of your overall health and cannabis helping the overall health, I think there is a direct correlation in that manner.
We'll be right back.
It really is amazing living in a state where cannabis has been legalized, or a country. It's just really cool still to me to be able to go to a dispensary and buy different products. But what's even more amazing than that is growing your own cannabis at home. And if you're able to do that where you are, but maybe the prospect is a little intimidating. Maybe you've never grown anything by yourself before at home. Maybe you don't have the equipment. Maybe you don't even know where to start. Well, if the idea is appealing to you and you've thought about starting a home grow, allow me to recommend my friends at Bloom's Brothers Hydro. These guys are the best. They know exactly how to get you started or how to improve your grow operation. Wherever you are in your journey, they can help you, and they have the products you need to get this done. They've got lines in stock from Horticulture Lighting Group, Nectar for the Gods, Green Grow, Fox Farm, Royal Gold Soils, and more. And hey, maybe growing cannabis is old hat for you at this point. Maybe you've been doing it for a while, you know all you need to know about it, but maybe you've been looking to expand your garden and add a fungal element to it. Cannabis flower is great, but it doesn't go great on a pizza, unlike mushrooms. Those are delicious on a pizza. And if you've been interested in researching this prospect, adding some of that fungus to your own home grow, Bloom's Brothers Hydro has you covered there too. They've got supplies from Uncle Mike's, Southwest Shroomery, Redwood Mushroom Supply, and Dr. Mike's as well. You can find Bloom's Brothers Hydro inside the Apple House on Harding Avenue in Terre Haute, Indiana. They're open 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 11 a.m. to 5 on Sundays. For more information, follow them on Instagram at Applehouse Hydro. You can email Fred at theapplehouse.com or call 812-232-1495 to get all the information that you're looking for. Remember, if you're thinking about starting or expanding a home grow, check out the guys at Bloom's Brothers Hydro. Sure, yeah, I totally get it, man, and that makes a lot of sense. I was, thinking kind of about like recovery pain from something like, your wisdom teeth being pulled out, or like, any kind of work that was done. I kind of imagined like in terms of a recovery regimen. But as you mentioned there, the fact that there's so many people out there who maybe can't afford, whether it's dental insurance or the type of care that would be ideal after some kind of dental work. Cannabis, I think, just like any other part of the body, if you're dealing with those things that we already mentioned, like chronic pain or anxiety or anything else that might stem from such work or just some issues you're having, cannabis does seem to at least offer the same kind of help that it would offer for stuff outside of the dental field, like knee pain or lower back pain or anything like that. So I can totally appreciate it. But as you said, nothing specific related to dentistry. And I know certainly not smoking. Like I'm thinking more about tinctures and gummies or the edibles, stuff like that, or capsules, rather than like the inhaling of cannabis, because I know that, no doctors or dentists are certainly recommending that for people in terms of how to absorb it. Yeah.
Correct. And as you mentioned, inhaling and smoking is just one avenue, but in the strictly medical field and medical market of cannabis, there's a lot of other products that can strictly help, as you mentioned, tinctures, edibles, sublingual. There's a lot of multiple different avenues for patients who don't want to stay away from that smoking habit or inhaling something. So there's a lot of different avenues, and as cannabis is growing more and more, the industry is becoming more widely accepted in the community. It's just going to get better, and there will be more product option for patients for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. And already we've seen it, starting over the last couple of years, some of these products that stores are now offering on their SKUs. I was talking with somebody a few weeks back, and they told me about, suppositories and stuff like that in dispensaries. And I was like, oh my God, man, like that it's just an example of the innovation and the new options that are out there for everybody as cannabis becomes more widely accepted, normalized, and that sort of thing. So, let's talk about it. You guys won that dispensary license in Missouri first. I know that must have been very exciting for you guys to get your operations up and running. And so now you're in other states, and I'm here in Illinois. You guys recently, just last month, I believe, premiered the location in Springfield, Illinois, which is very exciting. Tell us a little about what that grand opening was like and what the vibe around your new Springfield dispensary has been like since you guys started here.
Absolutely. So Illinois, we have this retail location that opened up a few months ago, and we held the grand opening in July. And we're actually very, very impressed by the positive response that we have received from the community and the population of Springfield. There's 7 cannabis dispensaries in Springfield, but Shangri-La is the only one that was built from ground up, and that was, that allowed us to really maintain and create an exceptional flow for our patient. Some small stuff like that does matter at the end of the day when a patient is able to quickly come into a store. We have a number of POS to really expedite the customer's process, and building it from ground up really help us to make sure that we create a positive experience for our patients and our customers. Even something as simple as allowing for drive-through. So currently Illinois doesn't allow for a drive-through, but if that were to ever change in the future, one of the big goal of our company is, and whenever in other states, we're in Missouri, Ohio, Connecticut, we offer drive-through for customers. Now, if Illinois at some point do decide in the future to allow for drive-through, our standalone freestanding building would definitely provide that opportunity for our customers as well, for ease of use during winter times, or for patients who have issues or disability issues, so it'll make it much easier for them.
Oh man, K-Paul, that is so cool. I love that you guys have that. It's awesome. You're already offering it in the other states you operate, as you were just saying, Missouri, Ohio, and I know there was another one in there. But I believe that Illinois is going to offer this in the future. I'm positive that, just the way that cannabis is starting to merge into a more pharmaceutical industry here, medical patients, obviously, but, in Georgia, for instance, they're selling cannabis products in regular pharmacies, like your Walgreens, your CVS, whatever they have down there. Cannabis products are being sold alongside of them. And those pharmacies have drive-thrus. It's just become part of how our society's evolved to allow for ease of access to these prescriptions for reasons like you discussed, whether it's mobility issues if someone's disabled and it's easier for them to just pick it up in a drive-through window. I think it's so cool you guys are already set up to do that in Illinois. And we're all sitting here right now when we're recording this on August 19th. We're all waiting for news about rescheduling for under the DEA. And if and when that happens, there's going to be a lot of changes in terms of regulations, in terms of potentially interstate commerce we've heard about, and there's going to be a lot less restrictions because it won't be so prohibited. And so things like drive-through, things like delivery, I fully expect these in the future here for Illinois. And I think it's so cool that you guys are already setting yourselves up, looking toward that future and giving your customers better experiences, more expedited, as you talked about. I think that that's exactly the right kind of mentality that you guys are showing. And I'm looking at your website, ShangriLaDispensaries.com, listener, if you want to check it out. And I can see some of the photos you have of the layout of your dispensary. Very well lit, very bright and welcoming. And I think the layout does seem to provide, you mentioned multiple POS systems, point of sales, so that people have their different, checkout counters. Nobody, everyone loves going to dispensaries. I certainly do, but no one likes to be standing in line for anything for a super long period of time. It seems like you guys are set up to allow for quick purchases, get in, get your stuff, and then get out. Is that the vibe?
That is the vibe, and that is the philosophy that we have initially discussed from day one. We tried to look and portray what the future of cannabis is going to hold, and instead of having dispensaries that are part of a complex or part of a bigger structure, obviously, those are helpful as well, but our goal was to create a freestanding building. That's how all of our locations in Missouri and Ohio and Illinois have been, just because it does provide that ease of use for a customer, that whenever it's Friday afternoon or on busy days, that ease of use for a customer, whether it's through drive-through or having expedited lanes for medical patients or even for our regular patients, the more fast in and out it is, it really does create a better environment for the patient, for a quick in and out, along with our trained staff as well. All of our bud tenders go through extensive training in making sure that our customers, if they do have any questions regarding any of their condition, our bud tenders are extremely highly trained in addressing all of that. So ease of use, that was one of Shangri-La's philosophy from day one.
That's so cool, man. And let me say too, I love the idea that you say you put your bud tenders through extensive training. Businesses do things differently in every industry, but cannabis being so new, I've talked with family members, friends, other people, connoisseurs like myself, going into these dispensaries, exploring these things. And, just like any other industry, the spectrum of quality service that comes from bud tenders, it's a wide spectrum. And I think that all of us who go into these places, especially people who are not as experienced in cannabis, maybe people like, I have a lot of family members who, because Illinois legalized it, they are just for the first time, they're exploring cannabis. They're even for the first time allowing themselves to kind of think about, going into dispensaries and trying some of these different products. And so for them, I think well-informed bud tenders is a huge part of, whether or not they're going to come back to a place. It's not just a matter of this isn't just like a fast food place where a friendly smile and quick service is all that people need from you. I think well-informed and bud tenders who can explain to people, when someone comes in there who's in a dispensary for the first time, they're not going to come in and be like, like, these are the terpenes I like, this is the vibe that I like to have. They've never tried it before, maybe. So what they're going to say is, hey, I'm looking for something that'll help me sleep at night. Hey, I'm looking for something to help with my back pain. What can you bud tender, what do you have here that'll help me with that? So I think it's cool that Shangri-La trains their bud tenders extensively to kind of help with it. And that dovetails into my next question for you, K-Paul, which was, as someone coming from the dental field and the medical side of things, from when you first got these operations at Shangri-La up and running, what is your philosophy in terms of the products that you guys carry? What are you guys offering at your dispensaries? And sort of, is there a philosophy in terms of pain relief or quality or anything like that?
Absolutely. So as far as our philosophy of Shangri-La as a dispensary, again, it all ties down into why the bigger store, why the freestanding building, why the drive-through, all of that, it ties back to our philosophy of making sure that we provide an excellent customer service. And as you mentioned, it is a retail dispensary. However, it is different than any other retail such as Walmart, where you just go in, purchase product and leave. You want our bud tenders, or you need the bud tenders to be extensively trained in asking and answering the right question that the patient might have. So our philosophy has been about making sure that we have customer satisfaction, which is viewed on any of our reviews. Any stores that you look into in Columbia, Missouri, or Springfield, or Ohio, you'll see that we're highly rated, by far higher than any of our competitor, and that comes with that customer service, along with in making sure that we provide any and every product that's available in the market. In some of the states such as Missouri or Connecticut, we are vertically integrated, meaning we do have our own cultivation and manufacturing facility, but Shangri-La dispensary stays separate. We never ever want to force anything to our patients, and that is, we carry one of the highest amount of SKUs in any of the states we're in. If you look at our website and look at any other dispensary's website, you'll be able to see that in some cases we carry more than twice as many products as any other dispensaries carry. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that our customers can get anything and everything that's available in that specific state. We don't, we try to offer all products. Even for Springfield, Illinois, we have over 200 SKUs. We have flowers from 25 plus different companies. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of those philosophy does help in creating a better customer experience, because we're able to offer full range of SKUs that is available in that state.
I love it, man. Yeah, it just further sort of exemplifies how you guys are thinking about your patients and consumers, the people who are coming into the dispensaries, and it seems like you're making every effort to make the shopping experience a pleasant one, as well as provide informed bud tenders to give people the information they're seeking, as well as give them a ton of options in terms of what products they might need. I think that's really, really great, and it is cool that you guys are, having your own operations to make these products, as you said, vertically integrated. I think that offers another side of things too, where some of these products, at least, as you mentioned, you're not forcing anything on anybody, which is critical, I think, meet people where they are. But the fact that you can see these products from the production side of it, how they're made, what's going into them, and then thereby have some informed perspective about what you're putting on dispensary shelves, I think that is really big, especially going forward as we look ahead in legal cannabis, and more of these dispensaries will pop up, more products are going to be available for people. The quality of products, there's already been, just like I mentioned with bud tenders, there's already a wide spectrum in terms of the quality of what products are on different dispensary shelves, and it sounds like you guys have the right idea in terms of, making sure that quality is up to snuff, and offering people a wide variety of different products just to meet them where they are with what they need. K-Paul, let me ask you this. I'm sitting here in Chicago right now. This is the first day of the Democratic National Convention, and I'm not going to ask you to get political here, but we are, less than 3 months away from an election, and this is a big one for legal cannabis. I've talked about this on the show a lot. Whoever you're voting for or whatnot, this could be one of, this could be a major threshold between where cannabis stands now in its, prohibited state, Schedule 1, and, beyond it, we could be looking at Schedule 3 before the election even happens, and then we could potentially be looking at fully descheduled cannabis by next year or the year following, depending on how the election goes. Let me just ask you, what is for Shangri-La and your dispensary's perspective operating in different states here, what are you kind of hoping for to see coming up in November, and whether or not you would, people are talking about interstate commerce as a potential byproduct of a descheduling or even just simply rescheduling down to Schedule 3 from Schedule 1. You mentioned that you're vertically integrated in some states. If there is interstate commerce, is that something that you see that would be a benefit for Shangri-La?
So multiple questions. Yes, and in terms of interstate commerce or whatever happens in the political party in November, I think our philosophy of Shangri-La is more based on people, not more on political. I think irrespective of who wins the election or what happens in the legislation, I think at the end of the day, the people are what's going to drive the cannabis market in the coming years. People have spoken and they understand where they want cannabis to be, and irrespective of who the next leader comes in for America, I think the people are going to continue to impress and voice their opinion. We don't necessarily try to emphasize anything based on political views, but more in terms of what the patient wants. And as for the last few years, we have a clear answer on what the consumer and patients are looking for, and that's where we're mostly focused on. Going back to interstate commerce, again, I don't think it'll have a significant impact. It will allow companies to cross borders and sell products in different states, and I think there's positive and then some negatives around it as well. But as I said, at the end of the day, we are working for the consumer and for our patients. And if that is what our end goal is, to making sure that the consumer and the patients gets the right amount of product that they need.
Right on. Yeah, well said. Before I let you go, K-Paul, let me just ask on that interstate commerce, what do you view as maybe a one positive and then maybe one potential negative? Let's say this does happen. How do you see that playing out in terms of what could be good for a business like Shangri-La and what might be something that's a bit of a negative there?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest positive is going to be that product availability for the patients. I mean, they're going to see a lot more. Currently, with the interstate borders closed, people in Connecticut or Missouri or Illinois are only able to get the products that have been produced by the cultivation and manufacturing in that state. So the biggest positive is that open interstate will allow patients to get pretty much any product that's being produced in the country, and I think that's going to be the biggest positive, is that patients will have more access to products and different type of products. When it comes to negative, I necessarily can't think of anything on top of my head. There's going to be a lot of regulation that's going to take place in terms of each state making sure if they have to allow interstate commerce. So that's one potential negative I can think of, is how everything will play out, because each state will have to create their laws. And again, I don't know with the rescheduling exactly what would happen. Would the state have an opportunity to say they don't want to accept a product from other states? I don't know the answer to that, but that could be one negative, is if each state kind of gets to make their own law, then what the potential downside could be if that were to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I totally take you there. I think that, like for instance, the freedom of patients to be able to, let's say, you take a weekend trip from Illinois to Michigan, and maybe you want to explore some dispensaries up there, and you're excited to be able, now that interstate commerce is allowed, to bring it back to Illinois, but you'd have to drive through Indiana to do that, and maybe Indiana doesn't say that they're okay with people driving cannabis products between those two states, even though they're legal there. The transporting, the regulations that you just kind of mentioned, that could be a significant hang up, as we've already seen in the cannabis space at large. So I think that is a good point, but a lot more positives that seem obvious there than negative ones. So lots to look forward to. It is a very exciting time, and listener, if you're as excited as I am to check out new dispensaries, next time you're around Springfield, check out Shangri-La Shangri-La dispensary, which is at 3128 South Dirksen Parkway in Springfield, or you can head to Shangri-La dispensaries.com, SHANGRILA dispensaries.com. Check out some of the products they have, find out about them, and go check out some of their, avail yourself of those informed bud tenders and check out some of their products and enjoy what they've got. K-Paul Patel, president of Shangri-La Dispensaries, thanks a lot for stopping by today.
Thank you for having me, Don. Really appreciate it.
And there you have it. I'd like to thank one more time my guest, K-Paul Patel of Shangri-La Dispensaries. Fascinating stuff. I love their origin story, coming from the medical side of it, a physician and a dentist, siblings who have done a lot of work and studying on the human body and have been, working in different capacities, making people's health, better, improving them, and at least, staving off some problems they might have. Now they move into the cannabis space, and they have that exact background. That is their philosophy and mentality when they approach the products that are on their shelves. They're looking at it from a patient perspective first, and then the recreational side of it. And I love that because there are plenty of people out there, as this business expands and the industry grows, there are going to be plenty of people focusing on the adult rec customers because, as I talk about on this show all the time, if you're looking at the overall pie of cannabis shoppers, of consumers, like most of us, you're going to be looking at like 75 to 80% adult rec users, just casual buyers, versus maybe 20%, 25% of medical patients. That may even be being generous. We may be looking more at like 10 to 15% med patients versus the remainder of adult rec users. And my point is this: more businesses are going to be targeting those adult rec customers than they are medical patients. And I think it's really cool when a chain or a dispensary, any kind of business that's selling cannabis products, I think it's really cool when they put that medical patient perspective front and center. I think that's what they're doing at Shangri-La, and I love it. So if you're a med patient or an adult rec consumer, and if you're near Springfield, Illinois, check out that Shangri-La dispensary and let me know what you think. Tell them Cannabis Man sent you. Getting into the national news stories and international stories, I want to start here in the U.S. I've mentioned at the top that the Democratic National Convention's in town. Been a lot of speeches about the future, hope and change, and whatnot. And they're talking kind of about what their policy focuses are going to be in November. There's been a lot of talk about women's reproductive rights. Obviously, that's been front and center since Roe v. Wade was overturned. And the story that I'm bringing to you now is from Marijuana Moment. It was published yesterday, the 21st of August. And the headline reads, GOP senators claim marijuana is a, quote, gateway drug as they oppose rescheduling and legalization. Kyle Yeager wrote this on Marijuana Moment, and two GOP senators, he goes on to say, said recently they remain opposed to cannabis reform, in part because they believe cannabis is a, quote, gateway drug. And then Kyle notes, as I say on the show all the time, perpetuating the dubious claim as other Republican lawmakers, members raise concerns about the Biden administration's push to enact rescheduling. That's the DEA decision to move cannabis down from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which would open up a lot of things for businesses, which would make it less strictly regulated. Some of the federal funding for research would open up, some of the marketing budgets for these businesses, tax breaks, lines of credit and capital, things that other businesses enjoy, cannabis businesses would finally be able to. The article goes on, in an interview with St. Louis Public Radio, which aired Monday, Senator Josh Hawley was asked about his views on various cannabis reform proposals, including comprehensive legalization and bipartisan legislation to protect banks that work with state-licensed cannabis businesses. Hawley says, quote, I just think that marijuana is still a gateway drug, end quote. He goes on, we have medical marijuana, which I did support in Missouri, so if you want to get the medical benefits, there's a way to capture that. He did caveat, however, that he thinks, quote, the medicinal benefits of it are limited, end quote. And then Senator Rick Scott of Florida separately said last weekend he also believes marijuana is a gateway drug. That's a direct quote, which Kyle notes has informed his opposition to federal and state level reform, including a legalization proposal on the ballot in his state of Florida. I've mentioned that on the show before. Florida is one of the states with a cannabis initiative on their ballot this November, and there has been a sort of a tug of war going on. There are the supporters supporters, like many of us around the country, who want Florida, especially with all the seniors living there and the various quality of life issues they may be experiencing that cannabis could help with, they very much want legal cannabis there. But Senator Rick Scott, along with Governor Ron DeSantis, they remain staunchly opposed to cannabis, and they have a campaign going against that ballot initiative going on right now. So if you're in Florida, this is definitely speaking to what you're dealing with here. And Senator Rick Scott says, quote, "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure these don't pass," end quote. So that's all of the article I'm going to read. I've linked it below. By all means, there's more information in there. Check it out for yourself. But I brought this to your attention because, again, even though you have some on the Republican side of the aisle talking about cannabis legalization, starting to come around to the fact that these poll numbers supporting legal cannabis around the country are undeniably high. As I've said before many times, we're talking about 80% plus of adults in the country who would like to see legal cannabis just descheduled, decriminalized, available for purchase countrywide. Now, that still leaves 20% or near that of people who are unsure or straight up don't want to see that. And these GOP senators perpetuating the same old reefer madness propaganda about cannabis being a gateway drug, this is an example of some on the other side who fill that category, who are interested in keeping the status quo unchanged. And it's just something to remember as we're approaching these elections in November. If cannabis is something you're passionate about, these are the things that should be informing your vote. If you want to see cannabis legalized in your state, like Florida, or if you want to see it in any of the other states, like North Dakota, or there's a few others that are looking to legalize cannabis in their states, this is the stuff to pay attention to, and this is why you get to your ballot box and you vote. Vote in the candidates who will do this, because they're out there. And there are a lot of them, I would say more of them, on the Democratic side of the aisle, but vote your values, vote what matters to you. It doesn't matter the party, but if you're passionate about cannabis, you should know where the various candidates stand on cannabis, and you should vote accordingly. Moving on, here's a story out of New York. This is MJ Biz Daily, published earlier this week, August 19th, updated the 21st. The headline, "Court Ruling Threatens New York's Illicit Cannabis Crackdown." This is something I brought up earlier in the year on a past episode. In New York, they started cracking down on illicit cannabis sellers, which was always something that needed to happen. Any place where cannabis is legalized, one of the first things you really need to do in order for it to succeed is to squash the black market. Because sometimes people have great relationships with their plugs. I certainly did. And the plug might deliver to them. And delivery is available in places like Colorado and California, but it's not in Illinois. And so if somebody is offering you the best deal that you're going to find on good quality cannabis and they'll deliver it to you, those are some of the benefits that would keep somebody going with their plug and buying illegally versus supporting the legal industry. I understand why people do it, but as I advocate on the show all the time, if you want legal cannabis to succeed, you should support it. You should go to dispensaries and you should buy legally. I know why people don't. I just listed some reasons why. I understand that myself. But even so, I'm looking toward the future here. And I think it's ultimately short-sighted to still be supporting the black market instead of showing those in charge, the leaders making these decisions, showing them that legal cannabis is viable. Anyway, New York's been cracking down on the black market sellers, and a Queens County Supreme Court judge ruled last week on the 14th that a smoke shop at 3512 Bell Boulevard in the borough could reopen after it was closed by the New York Sheriff's Office as part of Operation Padlock to Protect. This is from the New York Times first. They reported it. The city quickly appealed the ruling, which is the first successful challenge to the statewide crackdown. The crackdown began May 7th with public fanfare from Hochul, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and other elected officials. That was when I talked about this early in May when they announced the crackdown at large. But this story, this headline, is talking about the fact that some of these dispensaries, these illegally operating ones, they said, they being the New York City elected officials, this judge ruled that that specific dispensary did nothing illegal. And so they have reopened. Now, again, the city did appeal the ruling, and that is underway. We'll see where that appeal ends up. But for now, all of these, quote, illicit operators that New York City has shut down as part of this Operation Padlock to Protect, you'd better believe that after this one has reopened its doors, they're likely to follow suit. They'll take the city to court, and the judge may or may not find that they did nothing illegally. Authorities have said later in the article, this is mentioned, through mid-July, New York City seized $20 million in illegal marijuana and imposed $51 million in fines, according to Mayor Eric Adams. In the next section of the article, there's a quote from the judge who found that this shop did, quote, nothing illegal on the record, any illegal activity, and goes on to say, the court acknowledges that the unlicensed sale of cannabis within the city of New York represents an enormous public health concern. However, summarily shuttering businesses prior to taking the necessary steps to determine whether a violation has occurred stands against the cornerstone of American democracy and procedural due process, end quote. Again, the city has appealed the ruling, but it's likely to encourage many other businesses shuttered under Operation Padlock to Protect to challenge their closures, which, as I just said, they are certain to do. So that's all of the article I'm going to read. That's also linked below. There's more information. You can find that out. If you're in New York, if you're a consumer or a business owner, this is something that's obviously important to you to see how this plays out. And finally, the last article on the docket for today is outside the U.S. This is a globally focused article. It's from Reuters, and I found it on MSN.com, which is what's linked below. It was published earlier this week. Headline reads, Morocco pardons nearly 5,000 cannabis farming convicts. The article goes on, Morocco's king has pardoned nearly 5,000 people convicted or wanted on charges linked to illegal cannabis cultivation, the Justice Ministry said in a statement on Monday. Morocco is a major cannabis producer and has allowed the cultivation, export, and use of the drug for medicine or in industry since 2021, but it does not allow it to be used for recreational purposes. So that's the distinction. I didn't know Morocco was a major cannabis producer. Kudos to them for doing that and for allowing medicinal use. That is big for the quality of life of its citizens. However, the not allowing recreational use, I'm not too familiar with the politics of Morocco. I don't know how conservative it is. Being that it's ruled by a monarchy, that there's a king there, I would imagine that it is at least somewhat conservative, and I don't know how long it's going to be until recreational cannabis is legal there. The pardon by King Mohammed VI would encourage farmers to engage in the legal process of cannabis cultivation to improve their revenue and living conditions. That's from the head of Moroccan cannabis regulator, ANRAC. He told Reuters that Morocco's first legal cannabis harvest was 294 metric tons in 2023, according to official figures. Legal exports since last year so far stood at 225 kilograms. This year, it is expected to be higher, as the number of farming permits went up, and ANRAC allows the cultivation of the local strain known as Beldia. So if you stumble upon Beldia cannabis anywhere in the world, you can thank Morocco for putting that out there. Nearly 1 million people live in areas of northern Morocco where cannabis is the main economic activity. It's been publicly grown and smoked there for generations, mixed with tobacco in traditional long-stemmed pipes with clay bowls. Love it. Makes me think of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings style smoking. Very cool. Obviously, the tobacco cannabis mixture has been a popular one around the world for many, many years. And I'm just fascinated to learn that Morocco's been doing this for generations. I think that's cool. But very recently made legal, just like a lot of other parts of the world. The article wraps up, Morocco is also seeking to tap into a growing global market for legal cannabis and awarded 54 export permits last year. That is the end of this. I've still linked it below, worth reading and maybe sharing with your friends if you like. But that is just an example of how countries that have been operating cannabis, either growing or exporting or infusing or whatever, countries around the world have been doing this for generations, but it's just really, really cool. Just like here in the United States, it's cool that the goalposts, to use an NFL metaphor here, the goalposts are moving, and this is a positive change to be moving the goalposts in that we're allowing these places that have been doing this for so long, we're allowing them to now do it legally under the fold of normal economic activity in society, not labeling them criminals, and that has to do with the king pardoning 5,000 of those farmers in Morocco. Very cool step, and I look forward to reading more stories like that around the world and bringing them to you. Be sure to follow the show on social media at C-Man Podcast and share the show with your friends. If you know people interested in cannabis, if you know people who could stand to learn some more about it, tell them about this show and leave a rating or review if you like what I'm doing here. If you got any value from this, leave a rating or review on whichever platform you use to listen. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get this. Your ratings help me stand out from the millions upon millions of other podcasts that are out there around the world. And I can't thank you enough for listening to this and engaging with the show enough to make this one in the top 10% of podcasts around the world. Thanks again to K. Paul Patel of Shangri-La Dispensaries. Check them out if you're near Springfield and let me know what you think. Text the show if you try any products from there. Text me if you try the Days Off Taste Buds Strawberry Lemon Fade Gummies. Let me know what you think of those too. I really enjoyed them. If you try some and you get outside, I'd love to hear your experience. Scroll down and hit that Text Cannabis Man link in the description notes, and we'll talk. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Spend time with those you love. Call somebody. Tell them you love them. Give them a hug. Life is short, and we only have so much time with those connections that we value dearly. No time like the present to let people know how you feel. You'll never regret it. I promise you that. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk next week on the Cannabis Man Podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Goodson.